Okay, let's do it. Let's play around with an old photo. Okay, first thing we want to do, get rid of the white. That's going to throw off any measurements we're making. So I'm just going to select it, crop any measurements we're making. Then what can we do? Okay, let's do levels. Always a good place to start. Adjustment layer. Oh, that's great. Just get the screen right. Okay. A fill or adjustment layer. So these are great because they are non-destructive. So the original image is still going to be just the same underneath it. This is just overlaid. You see here we've got a background, we've got the adjustment level. On the right that's a mask, that tells us how much of the image is going to be affected. In this case it's white, so it's all. Here's a little link saying the mask and the layer will act together if you do things like cropping them and distorting them or whatever. So we want to focus on the adjustment. That's a little picture of a graph, believe it or not, and it's RGB, and we can adjust the RGB channels in here. Now personally I think these standard photos come up better when you work in CMYK, so more like printing colours rather than natural light type colours. Okay, so we got a levels adjustment layer, CMYK. I'll go through that in some other session, what that means. So let's look at cyan channel. So this little graph tells us where the tones are in the cyan channel, so all your blues. So this picture, and you can see by looking at it, it's missing a lot of blue. So all this area down here should have tones in it. This is the heavier end, more blue. So what we can do is to grab this handle here and we slide that up, and what that does is it resets the zero. So it's like being able to grab these tones and stretch them right down the bottom. So if I toggle that off and on, so you can see that's the original, that's with the extra blue. Look at the boy's suit, and the lady's dress goes from pink to a purple. Everything looks a bit more natural, even the sky comes alive, and the grass gets a bit of green in it. There's still a bit under on the cyan, but we'll come back to that. Let's get these all balanced first, so I like to just work through them all, CMYK. Now the magenta has the opposite problem. The magenta has a gap at the highlight end, and that basically means that there's a magenta cast on the top, so you can see the magenta in the clouds up here. If I look down at my down here, I've got the info screen. Actually, I'll tear that off. Now the info screen will tell me, just a minute, I just want to zoom in a bit. Oh, maybe not that much. Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the info screen will tell me up here where it's white, we've actually got quite a bit of magenta. You can see there it says the left column, so this column up here, where I'm pointing with the mouse cursor, 22% is a lot of colour for something that's theoretically white. And the left and right numbers there, it's got 18 and 18, where it's got cyan, you see 7 and 11. That's because before adding this adjustment layer, where I had 7%, cyan actually became 11, so that's why we boosted the cyan. So I'm going to drag this down, and what that'll do is that'll clear out that magenta highlight, and you'll see it. I'll slide it back again. So now we've got magenta clouds. I slide it to the left, clouds go white. So what that's doing is like grabbing this tone and stretching it to the end and saying this is where we really want white to be. So we'll go down to yellow. Yellow's a little bit of both. It's missing a little bit in the shadow. It's a little bit dirty in the highlight. Yellow's not very critical. Also, when these graphs go down to basically just noise level, then you don't worry too much about that, because that's just that's not going to have any useful information in it. So really anything you do there only improves it. And then we'll have a look at the black. Yeah, so the picture doesn't have a full value in the shadow end. So here is effectively what you've got is no data. So you've got space for data, but you're not using it, because this value here, somewhere on screen, that might be like 80% black when you've got the capability to have 100, so you can have more contrast. So if you drag this up, you're increasing the contrast. You can see the shadow under the car especially. Now sometimes it goes a bit cruddy if the photo's in bad condition, but that one's pretty good. So that's just setting the end points. That's the first stage. Usually does give a good start. So look at that, straight away we got something that looks 100% more natural than what we started with. And that's just the absolute most basic old photo adjustment you can do. So that's just the first level. Second level is to go through and look at each channel to see if they're if they look natural and balanced. So when I look, now I'm looking at mid-tones all the time, so this is your 50% marker here. So we can boost the blue right up, we can take the blue right down. So obviously too much, obviously too little, and it goes yellow. Generally what I do is I kind of find the middle, and just generally looking at the pic overall, I know that minus blue is going to be yellow, so I'm looking for a tilt, like a transference between blue and yellow tones in something that should be neutral, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. So I'm looking at the back of the car just above the wheel, and what I'm seeing there is it goes yellow, blue, and I'll just rock it, just stop in the middle. And to me, that's a quick way to find a sort of center, and it's usually about the center of the graph where there's a lot of tones like that. So then we go through each color, do the same thing. So magenta, it kind of looks weird because here we've got some dark heavy tones of magenta. This is mainly going to come from the lady's dress and from that brown grass. And then you've got a blue highlight, sorry, a magenta highlight. This is the remains of the pale magenta tones that are in the clouds, in the grass, etc. Grass should be green, not magenta, so that's another topic for another day. So midpoint here, I'll just rock it broadly up and down. So the opposite of magenta is green. So when we go green, we know we've lost the magenta. So if we go too far, obviously all the magenta goes out of it. We go too much magenta, everything's going red, magenta. And the grass, green is opposite to magenta, so the grass will go brown as it goes more to neutral. So in this way we sort of rock it to and fro. I'm looking just around the middle of a picture. I can see skin tone, clothes, and the car and the grass, and all working together. So my eye, I balance the middle about there, where I think it's sort of the best balance. This is a manual technique, but I find it works very well and can be done really quickly if you've got a whole bunch of pics to process. So now look at the yellow. Look how the grass comes up nice with the yellow, but we don't want to overdo it, and the skin tone requires quite a lot of yellow, but we don't want the car to go yellow, so I'll just wobble it in between. Okay, now the car looks white, the skin has a bit of warmth in it, it's a bit cool, and the grass is starting to look a bit greeny, so I might just err a little bit towards the high end of the middle. we probably don't want to do anything in the black. Oh, maybe. Yeah, just a little. Just so it looks pleasing to the eye. There's no right or wrong with black. It's whatever suits your photo, whatever you like the look of. So that is picture before. Very typical washed out old blur photo. And there's the after. So like anyone can look like a Photoshop genius in 2 minutes. You just learn that little technique and you can make a photo that is absolute disaster look like a nice photo. Now this is by no means complete, but for first level I think that's a pretty good start for this particular photo. So I'm going to save that one and I'm going to come back and do a part 2 on that, and we'll make some other adjustments. I want to make this sky look nice. I want to improve the skin tones. I want to make the grass look green, even if it fakes it a bit, because it probably was brown, but we can lift that, make it look a bit nicer. So I'll stop this tutorial here and I will do a follow-up on this one shortly.